All right. All right, mic check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is this mic working tonight? It's always a gamble. All right, well, I've got time to start. Whatever time that is, it's that time. So let's all go stand. We'll begin with the song this morning. This is a song we did last Sunday for the first time, and it's not last night. Last Sunday, I don't know. We did it I haven't slept in a while, but we did this song Sunday, and it's becoming a new favorite. So. Come all you weary, come all you thirsty, come to the well that never runs dry. Drink of the water, come and thirst no more. Come all you sinners, come find his mercy, come to the table, he will satisfy. Taste of his goodness, find what you're looking for. For God so loved the world that he gave us his one and only Son to save us. Whoever believes in him will live forever. Bring all your failures, bring your addictions, come lay them down at the foot of the cross. Jesus is waiting there with open arms. For God so loved the world that he gave us his one and only Son to save us. Whoever believes in him will live forever. The power of hell forever defeated. Now it is well. I'm walking in freedom. For God so loved, yes, God so loved the world. Praise God, praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, praise him, for the wonders of his love. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, for the wonders of his love. For God so loved the world that he gave us his one and only Son to save us. For God so loved the world that he gave us his one and only Son to save us. Whoever believes in him will live forever. The power of hell forever defeated. Now it is well. I'm walking in freedom. For God so loved, God so loved the world. Bring all your failures, bring your addictions, come lay them down at the foot of the cross. Jesus is waiting, God so loved the world. Amen. All right, you guys can have a seat. I'd like to introduce everybody this morning to our guest speaker. I keep saying morning. I don't know why I keep saying morning. It's just force of habit. I get up here and it's morning time. But good evening. Thank you for being with us. I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker for the evening. His name is Jeff Green. He's here from IDES. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but it's International Disaster Emergency Services, IDES. And I've been looking forward to this presentation. This is kind of a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and how the church can respond in times of crisis. and how God has uniquely equipped the church to respond in situations like this. And so I'm obviously not going to say it as well as Jeff will, so I'm going to get out of the way, and I'm going to let him take over. There has a laser pointer and up and down.
Well, hello. 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 Hey, how's everybody? Well, good morning. We're just going to go with it, right? Just keep going with it. Good morning. Great to see everybody this morning. I am so glad to be here, and I'm also just honored. What an incredible opportunity for missionaries from around the world to be able to come and share with so many different churches in one lump sum. And we're coming towards the end of it. We've got one more night after tonight, and then most of us will start that trek back home, and only to get ready for ICOM, International Conference on Missions, which is in Columbus, Ohio this year. But next year, plan for it. It's going to be again in November. It's usually in November every year. ICOM is going to be in Oklahoma City. So it's going to be exciting, and IDES, International Disaster Emergency Service, is going to be celebrating our 50th year. And we're going to be doing a special luncheon that week. And so we're excited about it, and just be looking for it. If you're coming, we'd love to have you come and eat lunch with us and celebrate together. Well, contrary to popular beliefs, I am not running for office. I am not responsible for any of those annoying commercials you've been seeing for the last 6 weeks. Even though it feels like I'm going from town to town to town, you know. And thank you for hamburgers and brats tonight. I didn't even, you know, there was no macaroni, or there was no, it was great, and we appreciate it so much. Well, let me share with you. I love the fact that there's so many kids here, and hopefully you guys won't be too bored. I remember growing up, I grew up in Melbourne, Florida, and one of the things that was so influential to me growing up was the missionaries that came to visit. And I get all excited because we'd have missionaries. We had this one guy, his name was Gene Doolin, and he worked for a group called TCM. Now back then, TCM stood for Toronto Christian Missions, and he would come down from Canada. He always come. I grew up in Melbourne, Florida, so they would come in January or February to get out of the cold. But it was always fun because they would talk about the Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain. And I'm like, man, I want to go see this curtain that's made out of iron. It would be awesome to see. But of course, it really didn't exist. It was just a figure of speech. Behind the Iron Curtain was communism, and the things that were happening behind the Iron Curtain was a lot of it was anti-God. And so they were doing some incredible ministry there that's made an impact. Even we're seeing in places like Ukraine, where for years the message of Christ has just infiltrated that country. And we'll show you some things here tonight. So, my name is Jeff Green, and I am going to turn this on. It is on. It's going to be going sometime today. Is that you? Okay. So, I want to introduce you to my family. This is the pointer. That's me. That's my lovely wife. I sent her a picture today because I wanted her to remember who I was. This is my older son, Joel, and my middle son, Jonathan, and this is my daughter, Rebecca, and they have 9 grandchildren. They've given us 9 grandchildren. We are blessed, and I'm so grateful for that. And back in 2020, when we joined IDES, we ended up buying a house with my daughter and her husband and 4 girls. And this one right here, she runs the house. So she's 5 years old. The other night, she was having a conversation with my wife. We call her Meemaw. And she said, Meemaw, when are we going to the pumpkin patch? And she said, my wife Patty said, I don't know. Your mom hasn't told me yet. To which she looked at her and said, you know, Meemaw, my mom, my mom is your kid, right? And you can tell her what to do. So, funny things. I got to write these things down because they're so funny. So anyway, so that's my family. We have been involved in church work since the beginning. My wife and I, we met at Kentucky Christian College, which is now Kentucky Christian University, and we got married in 1979, and we've been in ministry all of our lives, and even we were church planters in Brazil, and so we bring this experience to IDES, which has been so exciting. This is one of those things which I call a dream job. As the church relations director, I get to share the things that we are doing in and around the world, in the United States and around the world. So let me give you a little history of IDES so you'll understand it a little bit better. Milton and Janet Bates are our founders. They were members of the Marian Church of Christ. And in the early 70s, things were a lot different than they are now. Now, I can get my news instantaneously. Last night, I said that, and I said, for instance, there was an earthquake in San Francisco. Unbeknownst to me, one of the ladies that was in the church, her grandson lives in San Francisco. She's texted him immediately. And afterwards, she said, I just want to report my grandson's fine. It wasn't just a tremor. It's okay. And I was like, oh, But anyways, we can get our news instantaneously. If there's an earthquake around the world, we'll know about it pretty quickly. But back then, it took a while. Sometimes it took days, depending on the news. We got our news through television. We got our news through radio. Got our news through newsprint. Television was a lot different, kids. Today, you guys use a lot of apps and stuff to watch television, I'm sure, as well as cable, maybe. But back then, we had 3 channels. ABC, NBC, CBS. Occasionally, you could get the PBS station, but we didn't count it because it was boring. But anyways. So we would have television that way, and it was great. I was the remote control. So my dad would say, get up and change the channel. I'd get up and change the channel. Then my dad would get up on the roof of the house because that's where our antenna was, and he'd have to adjust it to make it better coming out of stations out of Orlando or Daytona Beach. So that's how we got our news. And it was, it took a long time sometimes to get it. But now we get it pretty instantly. But back then they were watching a news program, and it was happening that night that they were watching it. It was a reporter that was reporting about a horrible storm that happened in Bangladesh. And what are you doing back there? Okay, we're back to morning. He still thinks it's morning. He's usually not back there in the mornings, right? No, okay. Yeah, okay. All right. Anyways, so back in the early 70s, they were watching the news coverage of a catastrophic typhoon, which is like a hurricane, in Bangladesh. And unfortunately, this storm was so bad that nearly 500,000 people perished. And the reporter looked in the camera, and it was a desperation. There was so much desperation, so much destruction, so much death that he looked at the camera and he said, won't someone help these people? And so Milton and Janet were moved to action, and they started asking questions. They said, well, where are the Christian churches, churches of Christ? Now, if you know anything about our churches, we're called the Restoration Movement, and we're made up of thousands of churches around the world that are called Churches of Christ and Christian churches. We're not a denomination. We're all independent. So we depend on each other for fellowship and for growing the church. But as far as working together, it was, pretty hard to come by. And so back then, there wasn't really an organization that would help, especially in times of disasters. And so they said somebody ought to do something about that. He said we would have a stronger witness in the world if we would cooperate together. And so IDES was born back in 1973 as a relief agency for the Christian churches, Churches of Christ. So they began writing letters. Back then, of course, there was no computers, so they used their kitchen to write letters, type out letters, long-distance phone calls. Anybody remember those? Yeah, it's like in the dial. Yeah, the dial. You had to dial. We had these things called phone booths. It was amazing. Anyways. So, and so they had to do that. And of course, long distance across the world was very, very hard. A lot of times you could not make the connection. It would take days for the connection to be completed. They met with missions committee, churches, and various organizations, but IDES began to grow. And its purpose is still the same today, helping suffering people and then sharing hope and the love of Jesus. That's what we do. And so we have a saying that is very simple. It says, out of disaster comes help and hope. Out of disaster comes help and hope. So how do we accomplish our mission? Well, we accomplish our mission of providing help and hope through the support of churches and individuals on behalf of international ministry and our mission partners. We take it from Acts chapter 11, verses 27 through 30. It says, during this time, some prophets traveled from Jerusalem to Antioch. One of them, named Agabus, stood up in one of the meetings and predicted by the Spirit that a great famine was coming upon the entire Roman world. This was fulfilled during the reign of Claudius. So the believers in Antioch decided to send relief to the brothers and sisters in Judea, everyone giving as much as they could. This they did, entrusting their gifts to Barnabas, Saul, who becomes Paul, to take to the elders of the church in Jerusalem. This is the model that we use today. So today, churches and individuals entrust their gifts to IDES. 100% of all individual gifts goes to suffering people. 100%. So when we have a hurricane like we did in Florida about 3 weeks ago, Hurricane Ian, people started giving towards that. 100% is going to the work down there. And we have incredible donors that respond right away. They know they can trust IDES to get that money to where it needs to go, and that none of it comes out for our operational expenses. And so if you were to say, you don't do this, okay, because our missions are all sharing. But if you were to give me a check tonight for $100, if you were to give me a check tonight for $100, if you were to give me a check tonight for $100, don't do that. But if you were to give me a check tonight for $100, 100% would go to help the hurting. I did it exactly that way at a church once, and I got a check for $100. I was so excited. I went back home and I told our executive director, I told it exactly like I'm telling you. And he said, that's fantastic. Now you know what to do next time. I said, what? He goes, if you were to give me a check for $500. I said, oh, I can never please the boss, never. But anyways, I so often, when a disaster happens, we're like, okay, where do we go? Where do we give it to? And sometimes, you have local things that you can give to, and we don't want to take away from that at all. But I just want to share with you that you can rest assured that your gift will go to where it needs to go. Now, a portion of our church gifts cover our operational expenses. And these are churches that give to us like a missionary, like we're their mission, and they give to us on a regular basis, monthly, quarterly, yearly. A portion of that comes out to take care of our staff and to take care of our needs at our warehouse and offices for vehicles and those kinds of things. Currently, we have 16 full-time staff, and so it's not a very large staff. As you'll see, all the different things that we're doing, We're highly dependent on our volunteers. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on that? I know I run through that pretty quick. So the more, the thing that's really cool about this, the more churches and individuals that give through IDES, the more we can reach out to help others. The thing that I love about what we do is the churches are also sending churches. So they have missionaries that they send. We connect with those missionaries, especially in disasters. So if you're supporting a missionary and there's a disaster, we can come alongside that with our funds so that the missionary doesn't have to use their own funds in that instance. And you'll see how this all works here. So we have more than just one area of focus. We focus not only on disaster response, but also community development, medical care, hunger relief, and it's all centered around evangelism. When we have disaster response or medical care, we want to also be sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when I say we, it includes our mission partners and our churches around the world. So let me give you some examples of this. Last year in Thailand, the Karen Hill tribe lost their crops, 7 of them, 7 different tribes. And so the missionaries there saw the need. It was great. And so we were able to fund the need for providing rice. Part of it was consumed, and then others of it was delivered to the farms so that they could begin planting again for their next season. And so here you see the missionaries presenting it to, going to the farmers, and then afterwards they begin following up with them, and they begin presenting the gospel. And out of this one particular event, at the Karen Hill tribe, the missionaries that were working with them, there were 11 baptisms. And it's exciting to see how it works together. Again, out of disaster comes help and then hope. We've also been working with the Turkana tribe in Kenya, and we've been helping them with their farms. Back in the 80s and 90s, the Turkana people were an unreached people group. They live in the desert. They would travel from water source to water source, and the water sources were running out, and people were starving, and the children were dying of water-related diseases. And so the missionaries discovered deep wells using solar energy to bring up the water. Could be used for drinking, but also used for irrigations. And here you see one of the farms. It's more like a garden variety farm. They plant different crops, but it's awesome to see the difference that it's making. But they've also been using it as a place for their Bible discovery groups. Here you see about 100 people underneath a tree. They live in huts, so they always meet out in front of trees. Their churches that are throughout the region all meet every Sunday under a tree, share the Lord's Supper, and share Bible stories. And so IDES has come alongside the CMF, Christian Missionary Fellowship missionaries, and have formed a partnership with the Turkana. We have done 40 farms, or spent about $1 million, over $1 million invested. Results from the investment: each farm feeds 10 families, about 100 people. 900 families now have access to irrigated farming. 9,000 people, which is fantastic. And then 2,500 discipleship groups with 9,000 plus. We use the plus now because we can't keep up. The numbers keep going. Every month, more are added to their numbers. Sounds biblical, doesn't it? It's the book of Acts. And more were being added daily. It's awesome. It's just awesome. I get excited about it. 100 plus churches. They've had over 7,000 baptisms since 2017. God is indeed working, and we're seeing how amazing our partners are and how God's word is being revealed to an unreached people group. It's amazing to see. We've also been working in Northern Africa. We're working in a country that we're working with a missionary couple. They're out of Team Expansion. It's a young couple with 4 children, and they're working in a very Muslim country. They are very hostile towards Christians, and they would they can easily be fined for any kind of preaching. They can be put in prison or worse, or they could be kicked out of their country. So far, what they have done and what we've partnered with them, it's a $150,000 project, is that they're doing these day camps that are teaching the fruits of the Spirit, although they don't know it's the fruits of the Spirit, but they are teaching the children as well as young adults and their parents the fruits of the Spirit. And the parents are buying into it big time. We thought this was going to be a long haul before we saw any results, but they too have had 11 baptisms this year. And the doors are beginning to crack open, and people are responding to God's word. We also do a lot of the things in evangelism directly, as in purchasing Bibles. Here you see a young minister in Myanmar, and he's getting ready to give out all these Bibles. So many things are happening in Myanmar. There's a huge refugee crisis there, and it's great to see our missionaries and what they're doing there. We do medical care. Christian Mission of South India, we helped with them with clinics in 58 villages. 805 eyeglasses were given out, 6,600 gospel tracts, and the result of this was 16 baptisms. We've also been in Honduras helping with eye clinic as well as dentistry. And then we have been working for over 30 years now with Central India Christian Mission with Dr. Ajay Law. He is an amazing man of God, doing incredible work there with churches and hospitals and clinics and just doing amazing things. And here are some of the different machines and microscopes and different medical equipment that we purchased for their hospital, and they're thanking us for that. Then we've done a lot of cleft palate surgeries with Dr. Law, as well as now we're helping with burn victims. One of the tragedies that's happening is the burn victims, the Christians are being persecuted. And so we've come alongside them to help them with the recovery. Then back in 2020, which seemed like a lifetime ago, for some of you guys it might have been, but anyways, in 2020, February, we got word from our mission partners that work in China called CRAM, Christ Reaching Asia Missions. The need was great, especially for personal protective equipment like masks, gloves, gowns. Could we help? And we said, of course. And we came alongside with FAME, which is the medical evangelist. And together we worked on getting as much of that material we could to them. But then by April, we were experiencing it here in the United States. And so we reversed it, got new equipment back into the United States, and we're giving it to first responders. It was just amazing to see what happened. By April of 2020, we had already spent almost $500,000. By the end of the year, it was well over $1 million just for that first year. And then after that, we continued to help those, especially when it comes to the need for food. So by the end of 2020, we were in 34 countries and 8 states helping in different ways. Then we also do pharmacies. Here's one in Kenya, and we help them get established with the medicines that they need. Then community development. This is another one of the things that we've been doing. I love this one. It's hands up instead of just a hands out. Here are some of the things that we have provided. And I was talking to Jan. You guys had Jan, right? And I said, Jan, we've got to work together. We got to get this thing working, because some of the things that we do in our community development, he's doing as well. And I said, we could help you with that. And so we're going to be talking at ICOM for sure. So here's goat ministry. We have goats and cows, and that's been flourishing in Zimbabwe. We do a lot of water wells. That's what I was talking to Jan about. We can do water wells with him. That's in Ethiopia. And then the Philippines, we helped them after a horrible storm that came through, cyclone that hit back in December, providing boats as well as nets so that the fishermen can get back to fishing. Again, we're trying to duplicate the farms in other places in Africa. One of the that we have that we're looking at is South Sudan. South Sudan has just been a really desperate situation. Honduras, we've been helping with farms. With what do you think that is, kids? Anybody know? What is that? Huh? Apple tree? No. What? What? A what? A potato. It's kind of like a potato. It does. What else does it look like? Looks like apples, looks like grapes. Yeah. What do you think? You know what those are? That's coffee beans. That's coffee. What? Coffee? It's green. Ugh. So, yep, that's a coffee tree, and those are beans, and they'll pick them at a certain time, and then they dry them out, and that's when they start getting dark. And then they have a roasting time where they roast them and get darker, and then they become coffee, and everybody goes, yuck. Okay. You know. And then hey, $6 later you got a cup. Okay. And then we've also been working with human trafficking. We've worked in places like Mysot in Vietnam, Cambodia. We provide things like sewing machines. Again, I talked to Jan. You do sewing machines, Jan. We do too. We do dresses. They make dresses. We also provide bicycles so they can get their dresses and the things that they create to market. It's been just a remarkable partnership that we've had over the years, and God is really opening up some great doors. And we're also now doing culinary things. We're buying pots and pans so that they can be trained, and it's just wonderful to see the results of the things that are happening there. And then we've been in Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Of course, we were in Ukraine long before that and other projects, but we started helping with the displaced people inside Ukraine as well as the refugees around the country, in Poland, Romania specifically. These are young ladies, and they're making some things, T-shirts and boxer shorts. They put them in these little bags along with a Bible, a New Testament, and a prayer for soldiers, and then they give these out to soldiers. They're soldiers. They just give them out, and we provided them sewing machines and the material and the thread. And I've actually talked to these young ladies on Zoom. I Zoom. Isn't that impressive? You guys Zoom? Have you Zoomed? Did you Zoom back in the day in school? Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to report I went from baby boomer to grandpa Zoomer, so I'm really good at it. Anyways, and then we did a water well for a prison in Ethiopia, and it was a unique situation. The prison authorities, the warden, went to our mission team that we worked with in the past drilling wells. And they approached them and they said, hey, we understand that you do a lot of water wells. We need one at the prison. The prisoners are getting up every day. They're revolting. They're fighting each other because they need clean drinking water. And so the Fowlers is their names. And the Fowlers said, we will do it on the conditions that if you will allow us to come into the prison and start a Bible study ministry. And they agreed. And so now that since they have done the well, we had two of our staff members go there, and they were able to visit the prison. And the guards, we have them on camera making this statement: since the well started producing water, the fighting stopped. So it's making an impact. And so now we've added water tanks so that they'll always have waters. We've given them generators, and now we're looking at improving their living quarters and their bedding, as well as giving them ovens. Now, what do you think he's doing with? Oops, I pushed the wrong button. I hate it when that happens. Wait, go back. One more. Okay, one more. Okay, what do you think he's doing? What? What's he doing? Worshiping? Did she say worshiping? That's fantastic. That's a great answer. He could be. But you know what he's doing? You remember those beans we saw, the coffee beans? He's grinding coffee. And he's breaking up the roasted coffee, and he's making it so that he can make coffee for the day. And so I'm going to start this exercise when I get back home because I want to be strong like him. Wow, you know. You can find all these things in our gift catalogs. We also do hunger relief. These are things that are happening. About almost 193 million people across 53 countries suffered acute food insecurity in 2021. And that was due in large part to the war in Ukraine. Russia, because of that, it shut down a lot of the systems that they use to get wheat out to other countries. One of the things, as I mentioned before, South Sudan, I read a story about how those who were providing aid, the aid workers, were having to make a decision in South Sudan of taking food from the hungry in order to give to the starving. That's how desperate the situation is. And so we do long-term and short-term hunger efforts, providing nutritious meals. We have 3 things that we do: our GAP program, our Harvest of Talents, and then our Sunfish Bank. Our GAP stands for God Always Provides, and it's a thing that you guys could do here. You have a wonderful fellowship hall, and you can put tables back to back like this one here, and it's a place where I have a sample of it on my table where you fill up a bag. Each bag holds 6 meals. It's full of rice and soy and nutrients as well as vegetables, and it's weighed, has to be a certain weight, then it's sealed, and then it's put in a box. And it takes about 6 to 8 people. Usually 8 people is the best because there's so many different stations, and it's just a lot of fun for people to get behind. And we can do it here. We could come here if you wanted to. It's 25 cents a meal, and we like to get at least 15,000 meals packed per church. And that's something you guys could do because you got enough kids here that could really just crank it out. It'd be exciting. And so these GAP meals are sent around the world. We've been sending them to Ukraine. We've sent over 1,260,000 of these meals to Ukraine. They're great because in a combat situation, all they need is to boil water. That's it. And then we've been, first time that we've been to Djibouti, which is in East Africa. And here is our GAP meals being loaded onto a U.S. Air Force cargo plane. Don't ask me what it is. I don't know. I'm sure some of you could tell me. But they're putting it on this, and they're flying it to East Africa for free. And we were doing that even in Afghanistan when we had our base there. They were delivering our meals there for free. We've also been in Haiti, Zimbabwe, as well as Honduras. Then we do our Harvest of Talents. That was established back in 1984. 195,000 last year we raised, and this is a great program. So, if you have a talent such as quilting, painting, needlepoint, crochet, woodwork, furniture, if you do any of those things, wall hanging, maybe you make wreaths, maybe you can do Christmas ornaments. Maybe you can't do any of that, but you can go and ask merchants to give you gift cards, and you can make a gift basket. That's fantastic. And so it's really exciting. And so what they do is we have 5 churches that are doing this, and so they bring these are things that just happened this past weekend. This was at Lincoln Christian Church in Lincoln, Illinois, and these are items that are up for sale, and here's all the people going in, and they'll buy these things outright. But then we also have auctions, and these are getting ready for auction. And these are things that they are so good at it because they're the ones that started it. And here's auction. Now, I showed this picture for the first time last night. I just got them a couple of days ago, and I said, oh, I got to start using them. What do I behold? There's a quilt there. See that quilt? That was in the Lincoln Harvest. You know what's special about that quilt? My wife bought it at another harvest. My wife bought it because a friend of hers made it, and she wanted to make sure it went for the right price. So she bought it for $100. That was the right price. Then she decided, I don't really like this quilt. I'm going to put it in another auction. So she did, and so I'm looking at him going, that's the quilt that she bought, and she regifted it. So, of course, now, whatever it made, I don't even know what it made, but it's more money that's going to feed those who are hungry. And this is how we operate. It's a long-term project. Usually we adopt a country for a year, and sometimes these continue on after that year. Here we see mission partners in Myanmar. We give them their portion every month so that they can buy the food that they need to buy, and so that they can deliver it to the places that need it. We also do a part of the program is Milk for Mothers. We want to make sure that in Haiti that the children have enough nourishment to grow strong. We do sunfish banks, and there are sunfish banks back there. I've got 3 that are back there, but I have a van full of them. I forgot to bring them back in. So if you want some, kids, we want you to take them. So as soon as I'm done, I'll go out and get some more. But let me tell you something that's really cool about that. You fill it up, and then you get your mom or your dad to write a check for that amount that you raised, and then you can send that, and that bank is there for you to keep and maybe start filling it up. And maybe you have another project you want to use it for. That's fine too. We had a little boy that got a fish. He went out to his grandparents' car. He knew where all the money was. They would go, when they went through fast food, they would either put it in the ashtray or they throw it on the floor. He came back in 15 minutes with a full bank, and he asked for another. We gave him 2. But it's just a wonderful way to learn how to give. And then, of course, disaster response. I'll move along here. We've been in Florida right now, but this was what we did last year. We were finishing up the Hurricane Laura and Delta. This is the church that we worked with. We always work through a Christian church, Church of Christ, in the disaster zone. We bring our volunteers. Our volunteers stayed there even though the church wasn't in great shape. We put this tarp after Hurricane Laura. 40 days later, Hurricane Delta hit almost the exact same spot. It was only 18 miles further east, I believe. But yet it ripped off that tarp and dumped water, so we had to completely gut the church and new flooring as well as a new roof. But we were there with Georgia tornadoes and the other things there. And then we ended the year with the tornadoes in Kentucky. If you remember, they were devastating there. And now we are still working in Kentucky. Not only there, we're also in eastern Kentucky. So our volunteers work with our disaster response team in the aftermath of disaster. They assist in tree removal, cleaning up debris, mucking homes, repairing roofs, cooking and serving meals, and building storage sheds. One of the things that we do is we'll put the call out when a disaster happens, like it happened in Hurricane Ian. I contacted several churches up and down the west coast of Florida. Many of those people I knew, and then I actually called New Day Christian Church. Rusty Russell, who's the son of Bob Russell, is the minister there. And I decided a phone call maybe wasn't good enough, so I sent him a direct email. The next day, during the storm, he calls me during the storm, and he goes, "Hey, what do we do?" I said, "Hunker down, okay?" But we worked it out so that we could start As soon as the hurricane was done, we could get our disaster response coordinators there, set up things for volunteers. Volunteers come locally as well as nationally. We get the word out. They can sign up for a week or weeks, and they usually come in on Sunday evening, leave on Friday, and just a wonderful way to serve the Lord. It's not for everybody. It's a lot of work. We also do storage sheds. We do 10 by 12 storage sheds. These can be put up in about 4 or 5 hours. We can load 10 of these on a flatbed truck and get it to where it needs to go. And it's kind of exciting to see. You have all this destruction, all of a sudden you see construction. We can put it up in someone's yard. You go, well, why do they need a storage shed? Well, most of the disasters, the very first thing that you can't find is rental space for storage. And then you have other family members that live down the street, and they're in the same predicament. So we put a storage shed on people's yards, and it's great because we have churches that will volunteer and come in just to do storage sheds. Here's an example of one. This was Rose's house. Rose lived in this house back here. The floods came up on a Friday night and came up quickly. So she got our vehicles across the street, up this hill. This is an incline. And got her animals, her family, and then they took a canoe back and forth. This is her house 2 days after the floods. And it had to be completely gutted. And she had saved a lot of things. And she was so thrilled to get this storage shed. And she said to me, I don't know what we would do without the church. And that's so important for IDES because we are there to assist. We're there to put the church front and center. We are there to give the support that they need, so that they can, when we leave, they are still recognized in their communities. We have volunteers that come in during the week. These are guys that are loading our storage sheds. So pray, volunteer, donate. These are some of the things that we did and are doing this year. Myanmar, India, Pakistan flooding, Afghanistan. We're still working with the refugee response there, as well as earthquakes in June. And we're seeing a movement. I read from Doug Lucas. He sent out what's happening in Afghanistan, and there seems to be a movement of about 1,000 people at last count that are coming to Christ. Haiti, we've been building these homes. Our mission partners have. It's very dangerous there, and so they're putting them up as quickly as they can. The gangs are running the country now. And so whenever they go out to buy material, they always travel in groups. It's so dangerous. But these are life-changing. It takes a family several generations to afford a $10,000 house as simple as this. South Sudan, medical clinics, Tennessee flooding, and Waverly, tornadoes in Iowa, Kansas, and Ohio. This is Grace, and I'm talking to Grace. The people at IDES knows my skill level is more pastoring than putting anything up on a roof. And so we're watching our disaster response coordinator put a tarp on the roof of her condo, and she was just exhausted because 2 days later that tornado ripped through her neighborhood. 15 people perished in that neighborhood. You can see the house that was beside her all torn up. Her house was pretty intact. But one of the things that occurred was kind of interesting. When the tornadoes came through, they blew down a lot of billboards. And so someone had the bright idea to repurpose the billboards. And I thought, man, that's genius to repurpose that. So we were putting the billboard, and so these houses had all these billboards all over the place. And I kid you not, one billboard said, "We want to buy your home." There it is, you know. And so the great thing is how we can respond. We normally, our biggest thing that we do is refurbishing homes, but every now and then we run into people that have no insurance, no other ways, and we have the finances. As long as we have the volunteers and the finances, we can help build from the ground up. This is before, these are our volunteers doing the finishing touches, and this is a brand new house that someone's going to get at no charge. We did 36 homes back in 2009 after Katrina down in Pearlington, Mississippi. One of the things that was great about that was out of that not only come new homes, but also a new church. And so This is kind of neat. We've got a church right now that's in Western Kentucky with us building another home. We also have been in Eastern Kentucky after the floodings there. This is Hueysville Church of Christ. You can see these are all pews, 2 feet of water, wiped their pews out. This is a house in their same area that we've gutted, getting ready to put drywall in. We've also been in Philippines. We've helped with 750 family homes being rebuilt, tons of food given out. We've covered medical bills. And this is the thing that's really amazing. Almost 6,000 new people have joined their weekly Bible studies since the typhoon. The typhoon happened in December. It's not even a year yet. And the people are responding. Out of a disaster comes help and hope. 89 baptisms so far. And it's been 4 weeks since I checked, so it's probably more than that now. And of course, we've been in the Ukraine. Some of these look familiar, probably because you've had Polish Christian missions here, as well as Jan. And this is a container that we're refurbishing, and now it's going to be used for housing. And this was in Romania. They had a church camp there, and now we're putting in buildings. These were already there because they had a rustic camp where people would bring tents. Now they have buildings so that when the refugee crisis ends, they'll have buildings for their camps, their summer camps. And these are bathhouses and a kitchen that we helped with. And then we've done a lot with food in the border. This one is a food trailer that was feeding 1,000 people a day at the beginning of the war. We funded eight vans. One of the missionaries had a van that had 1 million miles on it, and they couldn't understand why it kept breaking down. So they got a new van. Anyways, so what do they do with the vans? Well, they fill it up with food. Then they take it to distribution centers in Ukraine. And then what do you do with an empty van? You go to the borders and you pick up people that want to get out. This young man here is a pastor in Warsaw. He works with David and Sandy and their ministry, Polish Christian Missions. And he is a phenomenal young man. He's always looking for buildings to house more refugees, looking for places where they can work. They're teaching them Polish. They're also taking care of all of their needs. And here they are getting in the van. One of the things that was great is before the war even happened, we put a well in Mariupol, Ukraine, and this well was being used every day because all the other, many of the other water sources were bombed. And so Mulberry International had this well dug at their church for all kinds of different needs, and now it's saving lives. We've also did with Tervisky Christian Institute. These guys and gals in this institute are remarkable people, and they're always looking for ways they can serve Ukraine. So we were able to fund these greenhouses, and they're used year-round, and now they were used to supplement income. Now they're being used to feed the people in their community. We're in Florida, and we're working out of New Day Christian Church. This is the destruction that happened. Here's some of the newest pictures. A lot of tree removal because of the storm, and we also provide all of the different items, things that you would take for granted, like toothpaste and soap and all kinds of personal hygiene items are so necessary, especially without electricity. We offer 2 classes, Prepared to Respond. Ed Sano is our teacher. He does these trainings, and you come at the cost of just his transportation and housing. We also teach safe worship. You can't be safe enough today, and they're just excellent. They're 4 hours. And we also do children's programming. Hey, this is really cool. What are you laughing at? There's no laughing. This is not a laughing matter. This is serious. Indiana Josh. Handsome, isn't he? He's really good looking. Anyways, we did this, and it's offered. We're getting ready to do another one. Somebody said something about Star Wars. I don't know. We'll see. I'm working on looking like, Luke Skywalker. That would be great. So at the beginning of this, it said we would have a stronger witness in the world if we would cooperate together. Last year, we did. We were in 37 countries around the world. This year we're already at 44, probably more than that. By the time I get back, it's just exciting to see how we can come alongside our mission partners to help in times of needs. Since the beginning of 1973, we've been in 131 nations, including the United States. You all have met Glenn, right? Glenn? So we showed all of our, everyone got to see our presentations at the School of Missions. It was definitely a school of missions. And Glenn comes to me afterwards. He goes, "Hey, I noticed something." "What's that?" He goes, "I noticed you don't have France listed in your countries." And I said, "You're right, we don't. We need to do something about that." And so my executive director already told me that, yes, we can do something. We're going to get with Glenn at the North American. Listen to me. It sounds like good morning, doesn't it? North American's gone at ICOM, International Conference of Missions, and talk about that. This is our head. Let me finish off. 1 John 3:18 says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." And we're seeing that over and over again throughout all of our churches and mission partners, donors. It's just been amazing. This is our headquarters. IDES is in Noblesville, Indiana, which is just above Indianapolis. This is where we work from. But most of us, well, I wouldn't say most of us. There's a lot of us that are on the road quite a bit. But it's always good to be back home and finding and discovering even more stories of what God is doing around the world. So that's my presentation. Pretty good, right there, right at the 7:30. I'm hoping Ben woke up now and discovered it's evening. But anyways.
Does anybody have any questions for Jeff before we turn in for the evening? I guess one question I had was about, what role does the local church play other than the support? Do you partner with the local church in the area whenever a disaster hits and you guys come in? Do you guys partner with the local church, or
Right.
how does that work?
Yeah. So just like with New Day, we established, basically shared with them what the expectations are. Having a place like a gymnasium, if they have showers, that's great. But we brought showers trailers down so that every day, after the end of the day, people can take showers. We usually have an evening meal, have devotions. We talk about the day, and then everybody brings cots. It's kind of rustic, but it's the best way we know how to get people into disaster areas. So we come alongside. We want the ministers to give us where we need to go. We want the ministers to help us find the right people that have the greatest needs. So if a person's, $5 million house got destroyed, that's probably not a person we're going to go and see because they have a $5 million house. But if a person had a trailer, the mobile home, and they have no other way without us coming alongside to help them, that's what we want. We want the church to help us find those people. Then we fund everything through the church so that the church is being able to help the people out in the community. And so also, too, let me just say also that if a church designates anything, it'll go to that designation. Providing that we're working in there, if you're wanting it to go to a place that we don't have any connection, we'd have to work on to see how that could be used. We try to suggest things that we're already working on or about to work on for the church, but 100% would go to that need. So we'll see Samaritan's Purse out and about. Again, they work mostly with Baptist churches. They're their entity, although they don't really have that criteria as much as we do. We know that we're supported by our churches, so that we want to stick to that. But I mean, if we have a need, we'll address it. The Samaritan's Purse usually are the first responders in the largest area that's been damaged the most. So they'll usually they can get into the Epic Center because of their connections with the government officials and that kind of thing that we don't have. We're getting there. We're getting better. We've got our Ed, who's been in law enforcement all his life. He's making the connections so that we can get all the things, that we can get into those places. But one of the things that I love about IDES is we serve those areas that nobody else is serving in. And Samaritan's Purse may be in a large area, but we're in Bowling Green, Kentucky, that had just as much devastation, but it was more localized, whereas the city they're in, maybe the whole town was gone. And so, what's that? Yeah. And so Samaritan's Purse, like in Ukraine, their whole entity can go. They're a $1 billion operation. We're not even close to that. I don't even know if we could even count as a percent, but they have airplanes. They set up a surgical unit inside a parking garage at the start of the war. They were doing that kind of stuff, which is mind-boggling, and I applaud them for it. That's fantastic. And so they take care of that need, and so we do the other things. So. Okay, good. Thank you all. Appreciate it. I'll go get some more fish while you're talking.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, like I said, this is one of those types of ministries that has always resonated with me. I remember I took a course in college on the church and kind of the theology of the church, and one of the things that I really went away from that course with was this a newfound love and appreciation of what the church is. And, we are a global entity. And so whenever things like this happen, whenever disaster strikes, we've already got boots on the ground because we've got churches that are there. We've got people who know the language, who know the people, who know that. And so usually whenever a disaster strikes, the church is the first people who show up to help are the churches. Years ago, whenever the Joplin tornado hit, I took my youth group out there, and they said, it was the church was working for days before Red Cross shows up or before the Salvation Army, or the churches were already mobilized and helping within hours because we had boots on the ground. And then other churches, like our churches and other places, we can get on the phone and talk to people who are already there, who are already doing the work, and we can partner with them. And so that's one of the reasons I love ministries like IDES is because they do this. Whenever stuff like that happens, I don't know what to do, but I can call these guys up and just say, hey, this just happened. We want to help. How do we help? And since they do this full time, they are able to point us in the right direction and just help the church to be the church. And so out of that hurting, God can bring healing and hope in ways that only He can. And so, as always, our offering box is in the back. And if you prefer to get on Easy Tithe, you can give that way. And we're just trying to get as much money as we can for these missionaries and support them as best we can. Let me say a prayer, and we'll be done for the evening. Father God, thank you so much for your church, for your people who, through your providence, are spread all the way around the globe and who are in local areas, who speak the local languages, who know the local people and the customs, so that whenever there is a need, that we are able to love our neighbor as you taught us to, that we are able to respond in quickly and efficiently. Thank you for ministries like IDES that do this in such a great way and in such a wide area and so many different, been able to bring hope and healing in some of the hardest times. And so, Father, I thank you for what you are doing in the world through this ministry and through others like it. Thank you for your Son, Jesus, and all that He's done. In His name we pray. Amen. All right, thank you all for coming. Don't forget, tomorrow night we've got our last missionary coming in. His name is Tom Mullinex. He's with, I think it's 1221 Ministries. It's a church planting group, and so he's going to be talking about that tomorrow night. So don't miss out on our last evening of School of Missions tomorrow. Thank you.